Hey, babe. You know what time of year it is?
School time.
It is. It's time for traffic jams and school buses making me late for work and all that. But if you are homeschooling, and we have done that for 20 years, we're going to be talking about that today.
If it's Christian, we're talking about it. This is the Mike Charleston Show.
All right. Yes. Welcome to the Mike Charleston Show. As you can tell, we are one short person. I'm not a short person. Well, I'm kind of short. Chuck's not with us. But hang on. I know this is a school episode and all that, homeschool. And you're like, well, hang on. We still got the Book of Job we're doing today. We got an email. We're going to be talking about dinosaurs. And we got Sarah's song of the week that is... It sounds like a musical. So anyway, that's what we got looking forward today. And yes, we're going to be talking about schools. And I cannot stand school zones. And they especially down here in Louisiana, everyone goes to private school. Everyone brings their kids to school, and they bleed out onto the streets. And anyway, but for us, we homeschool. So what are we going to be talking about today? So we're going to be talking about school. And we've been homeschooling for over 20 years now.
Over 20 years. And when you are...
And we're almost done.
Coming to the end.
Yeah.
But when you're with any group of women, especially, everybody wants to know what kind of curriculum you use and what groups you're going to be a part of, co-ops.
Oh, co-ops. Yeah.
All of those things. And, and people make a big deal about it because it is a big deal.
It can be.
Because we do want to educate our kids. And so a lot of people want to know what's the best curriculum to choose and what are the best things to look for. What subject should I leave out? What subject should I get somebody else to teach my kids? And today there are so many resources and so many ways that you can go. So it's a really big thing to consider. So I do understand people's, getting stressed and worried, like, which direction do I go? Because it could go so many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think women struggle with that more than guys.
Yeah,
like we kind of give the directions and the direction of where we want to go.
Right.
And we buy the curriculum and we'll go to the homeschool conventions or we'll go and look at it all. But eventually we're like, well, most of the time, the wife is going to be doing a lot of the homeschooling, the quote unquote, the homeschooling part of it is going to be done by the woman. So they are very much hands-on and know about all this. So what we're going to be doing today is giving you our top 10 curriculums that you should do. No, we're not going to do that at all.
I was like, 10, okay.
Yeah, no, not
actually
at all.
What we have today is I have 5 things that I think parents out there should not overlook when they're considering what to do this year for school.
5 things not to overlook?
Right. These are 5 very, very, very important things.
So listen up, ladies.
I think more important than should I use a Becca or rod and staff or the whatever, all the different things are out there now.
Well, why would you use a rod and staff? Oh, okay. I know what it is.
Okay.
It's a curriculum.
It is, and there are lots.
We've used bits and pieces and parts of pretty much everything out there at some point.
Yeah, I don't know about everything. There's a lot out there, but we've used a number of things for sure.
Yep.
So I have 5 things that I think are really, really important that we're going to talk about. So the first one is
the most important one.
I don't know if I could say that.
Okay.
But
one.
The first thing that I think is so important is to teach your kids a love of learning.
A love of learning. Yes, you asked me what is the number one thing, and I said, besides loving God,
right,
and showing them God, which is going to be, our thrust in homeschooling was not just education.
Right.
I mean, of course, education is learning about things, and God is going to be one of them. And I want them to I want to give my kids our culture and what we believe. Now, if they believe that later on in life, that's up to them.
Right.
But I want to start them off with a great foundation. But in learning, regardless of whether it's theology or if it's mathematics or whether it's history or whatever, having a joy to learn, a desire to learn is imperative.
Yeah.
You have to, when I think about my schooling, I was public school. I went to a huge high school. We had over 600 people in my class.
Yeah.
Okay, so think about that.
Right.
Some people don't even have that in their school.
In your grade.
Yes, my class. But yeah,
right.
That was our entering in class. And so I was in the middle there somewhere. When I graduated, I was 300 some. I was not an overachiever. Let's just put it that way. Maybe an underachiever in some ways. But I wasn't a dummy, but I just didn't apply myself. I didn't see a reason to. I was bored. I did not have that desire to learn. Now, I did, but just in different things. So I would educate myself in other things. So I would go home and read my own books. I didn't read the books that they wanted me to read. I would go to the library, and I loved reading, but I'd read the Hardy Boys. I read, things that interested me, which was sports and things like that at the time. And so everyone has a desire to learn in some things, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think sometimes that's a little bit brought on by your surroundings and the people that are in your life. And I mean, I went to a Christian school growing up, and I was an A student. I was always a teacher's pet. Why? Because I did my homework, because I thought that's what you were supposed to do.
Hello, you're not supposed to do that.
So people be like, oh, you always do what you're supposed to. I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to get in trouble. But I was an A student, but I really just learned for the test. Right. And so I made good grades, but when it was all said and done, what did I know? I mean,
you didn't really learn how to learn.
I didn't retain much of it because I didn't really care. It's like, I learned this for the test. Okay, I passed that. Move on to the next thing. So we wanted for our kids to love to learn. Right. Whatever they want to learn. It's like, I just wanted them to just have a desire for learning. And I feel
curious,
like that.
Be interested in things.
And I feel like with little kids, it comes so naturally if you take the time to feed that, instead of saying, oh no, we can't, don't look at that right now. We need to go over here and we're going to do math. It's like, okay, well, if your 3-year-old's not really interested in doing math, it's okay. They don't need to do math right now. Like, if they're so fascinated
make math fascinating.
Sure.
By like, we would bring out the coins. The money, everybody likes money. And we started counting coins. And we're talking about 2 and 3-year-olds here, you know. And now Jeremiah sells coins, So anyway, but the point was to count them, and that's just simple math, very simple math. Now, I don't know if our kids really like math, but they argue about math all the time.
They do.
It is unbelievable. Like, I am not good at math at all. I don't care about it. But you will present a problem, and Abigail and Jeremiah and I don't know, Hannah has joined in. Elizabeth, they all join. I think everybody but Joshua.
I don't know. Joshua knows his math too.
Okay.
It just depends on what
argue about it?
It depends on what kind of math. So, I mean, certain...
Yeah, that's right. That's the kind of math he wants to know.
Certain, algebra problems, those are pretty fascinating, and everybody's going to be like, well, how does that... Okay, well, I love math, so...
Well, but that's the point. You want to make things interesting and fascinating, and what's the purpose of this? And a lot of people will sit there and say, I will never need this. And I say this all the time. When will I ever need this? When will I ever need this? That's not the point. The point of math is to help build up problem-solving skills and stuff like that. Well, there's other ways to do problem-solving skills, too. But you just have to be creative and see that they're getting interested in certain things. I remember the time we had 10 caterpillars all over, and so we did an in-depth study on it. We were just talking about this the other day. We came up with this program ourselves, and it didn't go anywhere, but it was called the State Game.
The State Game,
and
our kids
all about the states.
I'll still remember the State Game, and I still have the book somewhere. I could find it, but we wanted them to learn geography and learn about our country, and so we took this whole big book and had basically a spreadsheet, but in a book. Now we could do it online. That'd be so much easier. An app.
Right.
But so for each state, they had a point system, and they could give us the capital, and that would be a point or something. They could draw a map of the state. They could tell us so many bodies of water for the state. They could come up with some special dish that state is known for, and they could cook it.
They could make it. That's a lot of points.
They could write a story about. There were so many different things that they could do, and it had a point system. And so once they had, for each age, it was a different number of points they had to get in order to finish that state. And so I don't know.
Jeremiah, you should work on that app. Work on that.
So anyway, it was actually, it was fun. I think some of them, I think they enjoyed it at times.
Sure.
We must have just kind of gotten bored with it. I'm not sure what happened.
I think it was too in-depth. We got a little bit, and 50 states is a lot to get through.
It is a lot. That's a lot to go through.
But it was still fun for a few states that they learned about, and maybe we should have kept it going on, because I don't know if Joshua knows where Chicago is. So
anyway. But the point is to try to facilitate a love of learning in your children. And I think oftentimes that stopped because we're so worried about, they have to learn this. They have to learn this. And this year, they're really bad at spelling. Okay, well, and I'm not saying you shouldn't work on the things that you think they're bad on, depending on their age. But sometimes, not everybody's great at everything. Right. And I will say everybody's education has holes. So, we think, I'm homeschooling, and my kids don't know where Chicago is. Well, you know what? Every kid that goes to any school is going to have holes somewhere. Right. So it's okay that there are holes. We just want that they can learn and they do learn and they are
Do
gaining
they know how to
knowledge.
get the answers? And we're not talking about Google.
Right.
Can you educate yourself? Can you put your thoughts together and all that? So that's the love of learning, I think, is obviously number one. Like if you're going to be schooling, can you provide an atmosphere where you're interested in things? And curiosity isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it can be bad. It can go in bad directions, but you have to lead them in these things.
But most of the time when they're little kids, curiosity, I mean, that's what you feed. And I mean, we would take our kids to the library all the time. And even just this week, the girls are like, can we go to the library again? Like, it's just, we have very fond memories of it. And we'd come home with hundreds of books.
Right.
And they would sit there and read through them. And did you know this, Mom? Did you know this? And they gained a lot of knowledge from that. And it wasn't because I told them, go learn something, go read something. They just wanted to. So I feel like if parents would just kind of relax a little bit, your kids will learn so much more because they're interested.
Right.
So that's the first one. The
Number
second one is teach them to do hard things even though it's hard.
Yeah, this one, go ahead and talk about this one because none of us like to do hard things.
Right.
But I think it is important to do that. Like when people say like, when am I ever going to use this?
Yes, which is
sometimes it's just discipline. It's just doing the hard, because if you always just do things when you want to do things, you're never going to do them.
No.
We are lazy in our natures. We tend towards laziness.
Right.
And so to help counteract that, let's just do the hard thing. Let's do this because it just needs to be done.
Right. Which, I mean, it is a terrible thing that I hear so many people say, when am I ever going to use this? And, I look back at all the years I was in school, and there are so many things that I don't remember. And so most of those I don't use because I don't even remember them. But I feel like there's so much gained in your character by going through and doing those hard things. So I think it's important.
That's what a lot of employers are looking for when they want a college degree. It's not necessarily because they want that college degree for that specific thing, because most people don't even use their degree for their specific thing.
Right.
They want to know, have you put the time in where it takes time to learn these things, to put papers together, to take tests, to study for tests? Are you a person that can prepare yourself?
Right.
That's kind of what they're looking for. They're not necessarily looking for, what kind of degree do you have? Even if it's a general studies degree, and I'm not suggesting you go to college or anything, but that's what they're kind of looking for in these professional jobs, or have you prepared yourself? And a lot of homeschoolers, I think, are weak on this, at least people that are like us, people that are unschooled. A lot of the people that have these strict curriculums, they're overboard on it to the point where you have no fun and no life in your homeschool. But people like us who are unschoolers, sometimes we don't have them prepare at all. And they just kind of wake up and they kind of do whatever. And it's like, no, you got to make sure this is done by this. You got to make sure this is hard.
Yeah.
So what we have done is we joined the Bible Bee. And I know that's not really schooling, but that is developing your mind and being very disciplined, and it is hard.
Right.
It's extremely hard.
Extremely.
And so, at the end of the day, if our kids don't want to do it, we're not going to push that on them. We're still trying to make these things fun. But there are times where, nope, we put them in a speech and debate class, and you are going to do this. It's hard, and it might be embarrassing, but you're going to do this. So do the hard things is very important.
Yeah. And I mean, there are times, and as a parent, you have to pray and seek God and know sometimes there are times maybe this kid was a little too ambitious, and we need to be able to help them kind of step back and like, okay, that was...
But that's in all walks of life that, we bragged about Jeremiah, when he was 9 and he's wiring our house, which was kind of foolish of us to let him do that. But we trusted that he knew what he was doing, and he proved that he knew what he was doing, and he can think that way, and he was small enough to fit in those areas. So go ahead and do it. And so he's brilliant in that respect. But I forget even what I was going to say about that. Oh, doing the hard in work. Mm-hmm. So not just in education, but in work, and doing yard work, and electrical work and plumbing work and stuff like that. Like, we have to do the hard thing at times because it's broken right now, and we have to fix it.
Right.
And we can't always afford to hire someone.
Exactly. And the third one is actually pretty connected, and we've kind of touched on it, but it's discipline, which kind of goes doing hard things, even though it's hard. But discipline, I feel like, is huge in all of our lives. I don't know anybody's life that'd be like, oh, I've got that mastered and I'm the most disciplined person. But, obviously discipline, I'm not talking about spankings. I'm talking about being disciplined and having a life that, when you commit to things, you stick to it.
Right.
And so
you finish what you're going to do. You say you're going to do something, you do it. You plan out a day. So a lot of this is more of like organization. Yeah. And I find that I am terrible at this. I'm very scatterbrained when it comes to this. And I know I need to be doing certain things. And I'm just like, it's overwhelming. And so I find that if there's a plan in place, that helps. Yeah. So it's all right to plan. The problem is we have like people we know, like the Maxwells or whatever, that you can look up, Terry Maxwell, and they have these books on scheduling every 15 minutes of your day. Right. And there's something to that where if you need that discipline, but have a little bit of leeway, have some grace in your day. Yeah. But having that discipline, having a plan really does help. Yeah.
Well, and with the discipline, teaching your kids that sacrifice pays off. So, like, for example, you mentioned Bible Bee, and all of our kids that have qualified for nationals and gone on to do that, they've had to sacrifice a lot. Yep. Like you give up a lot of, time where everybody else is going to go outside and play, everybody else is doing whatever, and you have to just work on memorizing and reading your passages. Sure. And because you realize there's a bigger goal that you want to get to. And so to get there, you have to sacrifice. Yep. And I
These
think
things don't just come naturally.
Right. As adults, we see that, even though we don't always want to do it. But kids don't, they're just not born with understanding that.
No, and I understood this when I was a kid and I played baseball, and I had to go to practice. We had to do different things, and I had to make choices in my life. Like, do I want to go hang out with my friends? Now, at the time, most of my friends played baseball too, and so it was make good decisions. Like, hey, let's just go practice. But if you want to excel, it doesn't just, even if you have natural abilities, once you start moving up that ladder, natural abilities are out the window. You have to work. You have to do the hard things. You have to be disciplined. You have to have a plan. You have to work.
Right. And then number 4, I have the world is bigger than you.
Yikes. Now, I think this is a big one for homeschoolers. Now, this whole world is lost their minds in the last 20 years. Yeah. And everything is, the kids these days think everything revolves around them. It's they have, if they want it, they get it. Right. And it seems like now it's been 25 years since I've been anywhere near a school, but it seems like, at least with the school system, everyone comes to these places and no one is better than anybody else. Everyone has to go to the same schools. Everyone has lockers. It's very uniformed. And they have the same uniforms, and homeschooling does seem to bring out a little bit more individuality and freedom in that respect, which is fine, is good. But the danger is you can really start thinking you are something special. And because you became so insular, there's no one else around. There's maybe your own siblings and maybe your small little core group in your whatever that group.
In a co-op or something.
Yeah, co-op or something. So you got like 15 people in there and you think you're something. Right. Yeah, you're a big fish in a small pond. And you might want to get out a little bit more and realize you're not that special. And like every kid is special to their parents. I understand that.
And they should be.
They should be. But in the grand scheme of things, they are just another human being on this planet. Right. And we should respect that and treat and teach our kids that they aren't any better than anybody else. Like, a Charleston is a Charleston, so we can do it. We can figure it out and all these things, but don't get so arrogant to think that you're better than anybody else. And that is a fine line. You want to give them confidence, but you don't want them to get arrogance. Right. And so that is a fine line.
Right. Well, and I think also part of that is teaching them to serve. And I think a great part of homeschooling is your schedule can be more flexible, so you can have time to go and serve others, serve neighbors, go do ministry things, take your kids to a nursing home or do different things to look outward instead of, because everything gets so inside focused and it's all us. And so it's like, it's a great thing to teach your kids. There's a lot of people around. They're hurting people and there are people in need. And so it's not all about you.
Yeah, focus on others. That is a good one. Going to the nursing home is what you guys have done for many years. Yeah. And it works. It's good. Yeah. I mean, it accomplishes many things. Not only are you focusing on others, but specifically at the nursing home, you see the end of life. And
Right.
wow.
Yeah.
So this is where we're headed. So all your pride and my beauty and all that this is what's going to end up in 40, 50 years. And is it worth all of that? What are the important things in life? You start to learn when you start helping a neighbor, or, one of our daughters had to give up basically a whole year of her life to help another person in our church because of a situation that they couldn't help their kids. So it was they were able to be there most of the time for them, and that's a huge sacrifice,
Right.
and they were willing to do that. So anyway, that is a good one.
Yep. And the last one I have, number 5, is
Number 5.
teach your kids to think.
Teach your kids to think. Isn't that like kind of the first one? So no, teach your kids to think. Yeah, which was, if you have, if you're into schooling, whether you're in a public school, whether you're in a homeschool or whatever, I've been guilty of this. What's on the test? Just tell me. I just want to. I want to be able to pass.
Right.
And one of the things I really appreciated was when I was in Bible college, so this was mainly college, there was a few teachers in high school that did this too. I remember one in my American literature class, I actually loved literature. I love literature. I know that might shock people, but I really get into the old classics, and Charles Dickens is one of my favorites. And I like literature. I like studying the books and English literature. Mainly because of this one teacher, and he made it very interesting and made me think about, different things. What did this book mean? Well, I don't know. What's going to be on the test? No, what did it mean to you when you were reading this? And then when I went on to Bible college, we had a teacher that said that we were going through pastoral epistles, and you're going to pass the class. Here's the answers to the test. He gave us the answers to the test. And he said, in fact, if that's not good enough, it's going to be an open book test, which is your Bible. And so you're going to pass the test.
Right.
I appreciated that. Now, granted, I'm like, hey, I don't have to do anything. But what he wanted us to do was think. He's like, what does the Bible teach? What is it trying to say here? And so once you get rid of the test questions and, what one person specifically wants an answer to, now you're free to think. Okay, I don't need this for a test question.
Right.
What do I think about this? Okay. But anyway, what are some things that we did to help them think?
So I think one thing would be debate, which in
We
our
do
house
too much.
was, at times maybe too much, like you
Ask
say.
Cameron.
But, I think debate is a healthy thing,
Right.
because what it does do
If
is...
it's healthy debate, we're not arguing.
Right. What it does do is encourage your kids to think, and not just, okay, well, you said that this is this, therefore whatever. Right. It's like they're not robots. They actually have thoughts for themselves and have opinions, and then are able to start articulating those. Yep. And I mean, not that ours are any great debaters. They're just loud and passionate.
Yes.
But
I wonder where they got that one from.
Anyway, but I think a lot of people, kind of shy away from that because of arguing,
right?
And I get it. And there's a time where you're like, okay, this is not godly. This is not good. Like we're just being mean.
No, we're
and
discussing
ugly.
this issue, and the fault with me at times, and I think I passed on to my kids, especially a few of them. I won't mention their names, but they get really passionate. Yeah. And I get passionate. Now, I'm not angry. I'm not mad, but I get passionate about it. And people are like, ooh, he's getting worked up. And I'm like, no, not at all. I enjoy the discourse, going back and forth and thinking. And actually doing that, you do learn some things sometimes. You're like, wow, that was a really good point. Now, I don't admit it at the time. But, the point is to learn and learn from other people. And different things, iron sharpening iron. And so debating is a good thing. So we were in a debate class, a group, and the kids didn't really care for it too much, but they did it. It was actually speech.
It was more speech.
So. Maybe if it was debate. But one of the things they did do was they would have a topic, and you had to go on both sides.
Right.
And I think that's healthy because sometimes we're afraid to look at the other side. Like, so if it's pro-life, and pro-abortion, we're like, well, that side is so wrong. I don't even want to argue that side. Right. Well, until you can figure out what their side is, how are you going to argue their side? Right. So you have to think what their arguments would be for it, So like, okay, what would be my arguments for allowing abortion? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not trying to teach my kids to agree with it, but if they can start thinking about that side of things, then they know how to attack it.
Right.
Because it's like, well, this is their only argument that they have. Now, how do I attack it?
Right.
Now, that may be like a lawyer move, but to me, that's I'm not afraid of reading things and listening to people that disagree with me.
Right.
Honestly, I'm not, because I know what I believe. Now, with my kids, I am a little bit suspect of letting them read just all kinds of literature because their minds are still being developed. And I want to be there to help reason with their thinking.
But you could do this on like much smaller scale.
Absolutely.
You don't
Absolutely.
have to get into like, do you believe once saved, always saved or not, and have them go read all sorts of stuff
Right.
when maybe you don't necessarily think maybe they're ready for that. But you could.
I'm thinking more of like evolution and
right.
things like that, where if they're not quite ready for something, they're like what we were talking about last night, the death penalty,
right.
And it's like, well, okay, well, 8 years old might be a little bit too much for them. And they don't know what they're thinking. Like, well, I don't know. Isn't dying bad? Like, yes.
Yeah.
But as they're getting older, some things are age appropriate for different discussions, so it could still be wrong, or you may have a strong opinion, but for them to reason out and think about it. But yeah, you help them along with these thoughts and be prepared yourself, parents. I mean, have answers, give a reason.
Yeah.
Isn't that in Timothy that we should always have a reason for the hope that we have? Now, that's specifically the hope that we have. But a lot of these questions, you'd be surprised how schooling and all that goes back to Christianity, our beliefs, and about God. And so that's a good one.
Well, because we don't want. I just think the big thing is you don't want your kids to be robots, and you want them to be able to think. I mean, I know a while back we did that show on the gap,
right?
And it's like I've always said, well, I don't believe in a gap, but why? So then I went and I read a bunch and watched a bunch about people that believe in a gap, and then on the other side, both sides, so I could consider and like, okay, well, let me see where they're coming from. Let me see where they're coming from, and actually see where I land and why. And so I feel like that's very important, is to not just be so narrow-minded that you just, well, I don't even know why anybody would believe that.
Just repeat
well, you don't even know
you've
because you've never even read about it. So anyways, I think it's very important to think.
Yeah, the Fallacy Detectives is a good book to get on that one.
Yeah.
It's a logic book.
And it was really,
and
it's fun to go through with your kids. At breakfast, we'd sit and read the next chapter and have little exercises. And so it gave things that we could sit and talk about.
And we still use it today, where I'm talking to Jeremiah or, our kids, and I don't know why I picked out Jeremiah, but, but we're saying, hey, that's appeal to authority. That is, what kind of fallacy is that? You are
genetic fallacy. That's a red herring. What are you doing? You know, but those are real things, and it helps them to recognize, like in a conversation or in debates that maybe we're having, it's like, you're not staying with the question here. You're going back to something else that wasn't part of that.
We want to be able to think for ourselves.
Right.
If I'm just repeating, and I think that's what the problem is today, is that with YouTube and podcasting and things like that we have a bunch of political people or religious people, whatever people are on, and people just repeat the rhetoric. And so the rhetoric is out there, and people just repeat that, and they don't even think for themselves. It sounds good.
Yeah.
It sounds good. And, they were like, hey, it sounds good. But then they never consider the other side. I remember a guy that used to go to campuses and debate people about evolution and God and Christianity and just things like that. And he would always come in, and people are like, well, aren't you afraid to tackle these issues with these atheists, these professors? They're really smart. He's like, I found that they did not come prepared. They are so insular in their belief system. They're surrounded by a bunch of liberals in these colleges and evolution, all these ideas that they haven't even considered any of these options. Yeah. So they've only believed some of these lightweight issues, and they have answers for those. But then when you have real questions and real pushback, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know and they look like they're fools. Yeah. And all they can do is just appeal to the masses and be like, well, we all just know that this isn't true, right?
Right.
And that doesn't work in a debate. No. And so that's where the advantage is, where we are, we have the true answers here. We have the scriptures. We have God on our side.
Right.
And so when we're discussing some of these issues, we want to season it with grace. That is for sure. Yeah. But it's go get prepared and learn. I mean, that is the one big thing about schooling, is to learn.
Right.
That's the whole point.
That is
to
the whole
learn.
point.
Right. So get educated. But how do we do these things? We do it in a fun way. But We do hard things. I forget the 5 things, but
So love of learning. Second is do hard things, even though it's hard. The third one is discipline. The fourth one is the world is bigger than you. And the fifth one is to think. And I had one other, which I guess could be
honorable mention,
but foster an atmosphere of creativity. And I know people talk about that, but I don't know, I think it was one of the kids lately said, how did you make us creative? Because, you know, we were with some other kids that
is it genetic?
Weren't very creative. No, I don't think so. I just think that, honestly,
Throw away the TV.
The more times with screens of any sort, whether it's phones, iPads, TV, whatever, it just totally squelches creativity. And honestly, the more stuff you give your kids, I feel like the less creative they are.
Right.
And I mean, we have a whole bunch of toys, and I'm not opposed to toys and all that. But I mean, at some point, when you just keep buying more stuff because you think it's going to make them happier, play longer, or whatever.
The stuff does all the thinking for them. The stuff does all the activity for them.
Right.
So the one thing that we did, and we got rid of the TV, and when they were really young, we didn't watch TV, and we still don't really. We have like internet stuff, but you know, my thinking on this was, I want my culture in my kids, and the TV presents a different culture. If we just have it on, which is what a lot of people do. I'm not afraid of the TV. Like our kids, we watch things, and especially now that they're older, and my kids are watching a lot more.
Yeah.
But early on in their development, in their brain development, I figured the less screens was better because their creativity, they go out and explore. They sit there with these things and think and figure out how they work. And they are creative. And so that is a big one that I think that, especially in this day and age when screens are abundant, and how do you get them to be creative? And that is toss away the thing that someone had to be creative to make that thing for your kid so he can be dumb. He can be amused.
Right.
And there is a time for amusement. I'm not saying that's bad, but think about in the development of your mind, if you have nothing around and you have to entertain yourself somehow, what are you going to do?
Right.
You got to think. You got to be creative, and so I think that does foster creativity. Is not that you have to be minimalist and have nothing in your house. You know?
No, I mean, obviously toys are good and all that, but I mean, I don't know. I just think about toys today, and you know, some kids that get every toy they want, and it's like, oh, they want a dollhouse, so they get a dollhouse. Then they want a castle, they get a castle. Then they want this, they get this. Instead of like, we have to make a fort out of. We're gonna get blankets and do whatever and create a fort or create a castle. Or create
and you have to build the fort and out of Legos, and I give them incentive. You know, like we used to go to the thrift store and get broken toys, and I didn't like noisy toys, but my boys would, especially Jeremiah, would figure out the wiring and figure out how to fix it.
Yeah.
And solder and all this stuff, and he got really into that. And then you'd have the toy, but that was the least exciting part.
Right.
The more exciting part was figuring out why this wasn't working, how you can fix it. And I thought that was fascinating. So now he's out there creating things so your kids can be amused. And so that's the thing is like, how do you foster that creativity? That is a good one. That should have been number 6, but we only had 5. So
I mean, I think these things though are way more important than which particular curriculum you do or how, you know, whether you spend 30 minutes on this subject or 45 minutes, like we get so bogged down in all the particulars.
Those
and
are
I'm
just
like,
facts. I mean, they teach you different things, but different curriculums. They're just facts. You know, history facts, math facts. They obviously teach you how to do math.
Right.
I'm not against that stuff. That is good.
Yeah.
You have to figure out something. But I do like these, how these are in the background, how important these things are. Yeah. What are we fostering?
Yep. So I feel like if we can kind of get some of these things down and get these things going through your head, and honestly, you know, some people think, well, I'm not homeschooling yet because I just have a baby or a 1-year-old. I'm like, guys, homeschooling starts right at the beginning, you know, so it's time.
It's time. And be excited, and parent, be excited about learning yourself.
Yeah.
Honestly, you shouldn't stop learning yourself. Even at 48, I still have to learn sometimes.
Well, and your kids, you got to be with them. Yeah. I mean, you know, like if you're hoping to have some sort of something that you can just give them and then you can go do your thing, I'm like, well, it's not going to work well. So it's time to.
It's true. In this day and age, that's harder.
That is hard.
That is harder. So anyway, that is our school moment, I guess. This year's school segment.
Yeah. All right.
I don't think we had one last year.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Whatever. All right.
How well do you know your Bible?
All right. How well do you know your Bible? This week we're in the book of Job.
Book of Job.
Not the book of Job.
No.
It's ridiculous. People say Job. And anyway, it's Job. This is a pretty popular book. You know, it's a big storyline. It's a good book, but
Do you think it's mostly popular because people go through hard times and everybody says, "Oh, go read Job"?
Well, Job is the patience of Job. You know, someone, I was working on a job once and a customer came out and said, "You have the patience of Job." And I was telling him to get back in the house. Anyway, so there's a lot of mystery about, like who wrote it. And when was it written? There's a lot of theories that it was one of the earlier books ever written.
Right.
And but either way, we're not sure exactly who wrote it or where it came from. And but this is a story about Job, who was a man of God.
He was.
And he was a worshiper of God. This was before the time of the law. This was the time before judges. He was not an Israelite.
Right. Well, there's no mention of Israel, so it must be before all of that.
Just a guy who served God. Yeah. And so imagine that. Is that possible before the Israelites? There's something to chew on. Yeah. And before the law, of course, there's people that could serve God. But anyway, then the story starts out with, kind of a bizarre scene. We're taken into the heavenlies where God has a council. Mm-hmm. He has all his people around him, right? Not people, but his guys, but his beings around him and his counselors and things. And Satan comes up and is able to access this and challenge God and, say, hey, well, there's, the only reason why Job is, he says, well, check out my servant Job. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, that's only because you bless him. And he's like, okay, well, take away some things, but just don't harm him. Don't kill him. Right. And so Satan goes around and is starting to mess with his family and gives him all kinds of boils and
it actually happens pretty quickly.
It does. Okay,
it's
right,
like
sure.
his whole world. Right. I mean, he goes from being the wealthiest man. He's got 10 children. Everything's going well. And from chapter 1, I don't know where it starts and what verse, but to chapter 2, verse 13, he loses everything.
Right. It's all gone.
People talk about losing a child and how hard that must be, and it is, but try losing 10.
Right, he lost his whole family, lost everything, his possessions.
But you said boils, but they actually, at first, that didn't happen. First, he just lost his children, he lost all his stuff, and then that's when the devil went back to God and said, yeah, but you won't let me touch his body.
Oh, sure.
And so then he's like, okay, well,
and
but
he
you
left
can't
his wife. Just,
Wow.
Well, the wife said, curse God and die. And
yeah, she did.
But God chose to leave his wife with him.
She does get a bad rap, but she did lose all the same things he lost. So, give her a little credit.
This covers a lot of different things. So you have the three friends that come to counsel him in some way, comfort him, a weird way of comforting him. Yeah. But the belief system of the time, which is very similar to today, honestly, is that if you are a follower of God, only good things happen and blessings come. And God will bless those that are doing well. Right. And only those that are in sin do bad things happen to. Mm-hmm. Now, we know that in our mind that's not true, but in practicality, and let's be fair, if there's a few things in my life that are starting to go haywire, I'm going to okay, Lord, what am I doing? Am I doing something wrong here? Yeah. Or, and then maybe there is a point where you need to check yourself. Mm-hmm. But these guys have if you listen to their stories, the three guys, and even his wife, they have the predominant belief system of that time period. And even Job did probably. Yeah. And the other guy that shows up later doesn't so much. He has a different take, but it's still not necessarily the correct take. Right. Actually, God says that Job was correct, and in the way he presented. So it's how you present God, and I think this is why it's an important a book. Because it's okay, we kind of talk about Calvinists and things like that throughout our show. And, I'm not I am anti-Calvinist, but, I have Calvinist friends and I know the issue isn't always so easy. But why I make it a big deal is because it's how we portray God. And I think this is how the friends portray God, how Job portrays God, and how God is like, hey, you portraying me in an incorrect manner. And I think that is important that we try to figure these things out. That's what theology is.
Right.
And does it mean that one person's going to go to hell because maybe they didn't quite understand? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're still saved by grace through faith, but we are still trying to figure out God. And you listen to these guys talk for chapters, and you see a lot of the modern philosophies maybe of the day, and they're just trying to figure out that Job he messed up somewhere. He's in sin, and he needs to repent.
Under God's judgment. So we want to know what happened.
Right. And Job is like, if I repented, I'm going to repent, but I don't know what I did. And in fact, he starts to challenge God. Mm-hmm. And God, like, this is unfair. This is unjust. Mm-hmm. So the book is really about justice here. And like, God, this is unjust. You know, what have I done? Mm-hmm. And so then he starts to challenge God and directly, and God shows up.
Yeah,
he shows up in a big way, in a whirlwind or something like that, mm-hmm. and starts challenging Job and his friends. You know, he rebukes the friends, but really challenges Job, but not like in a bad way. You know, but he's very abrupt and very not abrupt, but very upfront with him, mm-hmm. and he's like, "Where were you? You know, when I laid the foundations, where were you? Right. You know, tell me where this is. Tell me." He starts asking him question after question after question, which obviously Job has no answer to.
No.
And it is a good reminder to us that in our little world, sometimes we think God owes us something, mm-hmm. and like this is like the only life, but God has way bigger plans. He can see everything that's going on. He knows what's going on. He knows what's good for us, and he knows that at this moment you might think, well, how is the death of a child a good thing? How's the death of my wife? You know, how is the destruction of this a good thing? And it may not be necessarily a good thing. Like death is never a good thing. You know, it wasn't part of the plan, but it was. But God can use these things mm-hmm. to produce things in us and to help us to grow and to make us better people. You know, make us better. I don't want to say better Christians, but you know what I mean. Like we can learn. We can learn more about God,
to refine us, and then not only refine us, but so that others may see our example and follow
and glorify God in the process. And so this is a very interesting book. I know a lot of people will read it. It's kind of depressing at times, you know, but there's a lot of philosophical issues in this book, and so I like the book. It's a great book. There's mentions of behemoths and Leviathan in there. There's mm-hmm. just so many things that when you start talking about the Bible, these things predate a lot of things that were even known at the time.
Right.
You know, so it's like, well, these things were written. A lot of people are like, well, these things were written later. No. These things were, Job was written early. Yeah. And so to put these things in the Bible and very scientific things, discoveries that they found, you're like, wow, okay, that was in the book of Job. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, you have a number of verses that are kind of like verses that are popular in the book of Job.
Right. So Job 13:15 says, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him, but I will maintain mine own ways before him. So,
I know a lot of people complain about like that one song, "He gives and takes away," and people say, well, the devil, Satan actually took away. But the thing is, God allowed that to happen. And so when you're saying that he gives and he takes away those things in our lives that may not be as necessary as we think they are. Mm-hmm. And he allows those things to happen. And eventually it is to do something in us, to purify us. And, you know, we can't see the big picture at that time. Nope. Our job is to trust him. Just trust him and to follow him.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I have Job 121, which does say that. It says, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That's
the thing. You know, at the end, it's like, regardless of what you think, you know, he gives and takes, you know, mm-hmm. and all this, naked I come, and blessed be the name of the Lord. No matter what happens, his name is to be blessed.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yep. And then I have one other one. Job 19:25 says, for I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. Which,
it's almost like a prophecy.
Yeah, which actually to me is kind of amazing, because this is a really old book, and it's like, wow. So he knew some picture, some idea of what the end will be. Like,
Right.
and I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is a good point, because we are talking. We don't know exactly the time frame here, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like the promise of Messiah has been known to Job. Maybe it was. Maybe somehow he knew these things. Maybe he heard something. Maybe he ran into Abraham. I don't know. These things we're not exactly sure how old this is.
Mm-hmm.
If Job was predated Abraham, even we don't know, and so anyway, but yeah, it's kind of like a prophecy there that he knows his Redeemer, and so anyway, it's a good book. It's easy to read because it's a conversation basically between four people for the most part. I mean, you think about a play, speaking of musicals and such, you have the scene up in heaven, right? And then you go down to Job, and he's in sackcloth and ashes and depressed, and his friends come and talk to him and basically blame him. And then another guy comes in, and then God shows up. So scene 3, God shows up. And then it basically tells the truth. It's like, this is it. And yet Job was blameless in all of it. So that is fascinating, which is interesting to think, because he kind of accused God of certain things. And so if he was blameless, that should be our attitude. I mean, I'm not suggesting that, but I think what is here that we see is that Job is open and honest, and he's honest with God. And I think a lot of the times we need to be honest with God, with ourselves. I don't need to necessarily blame God, but I think it's all right to ask God, question, like, God, what is going on? I don't know what's going on, and to request certain things of him, and because we don't know. And maybe he does reveal himself in certain ways to us, but to be who we are and to open ourselves up to God. God already knows what we're thinking, So I think that is kind of a interesting concept, because you read some of these things, he kind of goes back and forth, because he'll say something kind of harsh, but then he'll play it back.
Right.
And God basically was saying that, Job, you were right. You didn't do me injustice.
Nope.
And so anyway, that's the book of Job.
It's a good one.
It is a good book. So yeah, go check it out. Go read it. It's a pretty quick read. How long does it take to read it?
I don't know. I mean, it is 42 chapters, but they're not necessarily all long chapters. I mean, I don't know.
45 minutes, something like that.
Maybe.
Hour.
Yeah.
At most.
Not more than an hour.
Right.
We could read it.
Yeah, go check Job out.
Music with Sarah.
What song do you like?
All righty. The song of the week, this is our K-Love song of the week. Actually, it's probably never going to be played on K-Love.
Probably not.
So the song, why don't you go ahead and tell the name of the song, and then I got a little story about the song.
Okay, so the song is called He Will Keep You, parentheses Psalm 121, and it's by Sovereign Grace Music.
And it's the live version.
And it's a live version. And I think it's beautiful, but go ahead and say what you want to say.
I didn't say it wasn't beautiful. It is a nice song. But as you listen to it, I can't help but think this is part of a musical. It sounds like a musical. It sounds like a little boy just asked her mom, his mom, a question of something, and she starts walking around with him throughout town singing the song. Touching little things, saying hi to neighbors as she's singing the song. And that's what I visualize every time I hear the song.
Maybe you've just seen too many musicals. I don't know.
I haven't seen many musicals, but I know Big Fan Brand is going to immediately stop and go and listen to this because he likes musicals.
Okay, well, this one is a good one, musical or not. I can see how you would say that, but I think it's a beautiful song. It does come from Psalm 121, which is why that's in parentheses there. So I listened to it, I don't know, many times, and then I went and read Psalm 121. I'm like, yep, it's pretty much right out of that psalm.
Sure.
So, and the album is a whole album of psalms. So I've got more to check out later and see if I like the other ones. But anyway, this one is beautiful. It says, I lift my eyes and see, I need not be afraid. All my help comes from the Lord, who the earth and sky has made. So if he's able to make the earth and sky, I'm pretty sure my little needs down here, he's able to help me.
He understands.
So, and then the chorus says, He will keep you from all evils behind you and before. He will sustain you through this journey from now and evermore. And then it has another verse says, the Lord will never sleep. My steps he has ordained. For the one who holds the night is the sovereign of my days. And then it just repeats the chorus 3 times.
You're not singing it like a musical, though.
I'm not, because it's
now everybody's curious and be like, it sounds like a musical?
It is hard to talk about it without singing it. But anyway... But
I just ruined it for everyone. They're like going to go sing it. They're going to go look at it and hear it and go,
whatever,
sounds like a musical. Sure.
Musical or not, it's beautiful.
They should do a Christian musical. Why not? That would be interesting.
That'd be cool. I'd like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this song, I think, I think it's in Ephesians that it says sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. So this is one way that you can sing a psalm. And I like it when people put psalms to songs so that we can sing
like in
them.
musicals?
Oh, sure, like in musicals. Anyway, so it's just very pretty and very true because obviously it does come straight from the Bible and just reminds me that no matter what I face, no matter what I go through, it says he'll keep me, he'll sustain me, he'll be with me in this journey. And so it's like he'll keep you from all evils. It's not necessarily saying that nothing bad will ever
going to happen to
me.
Right.
Like things will happen and they do happen.
Right.
But he's going to be with me through everything that I go through.
Right.
And that
he's
pretty
going to be
much,
our strength during that.
Right. And that changes everything for me.
Absolutely. No, it's a good song. I'm not trying to make light of it, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just when I hear it, the way it sounds, it just sounds like it's a musical. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I like some musicals, but it just sounds like, she's singing. And I guess, when you think about the song itself, that if there was some kind of maybe turn for the worst in a city or in a family's life, and they go out walking and talking, and then they end up singing because that's what they do in musicals, and that would be the song. And so that's what it sounds like. And but you can go ahead and listen to it and say that I'm wrong, because I'm telling you, it sounds like it.
Even if somebody wanted to take it and make it into a musical, I mean, there's a great start. It's a great premise, and go with it.
There you go.
Let me know if you come up with something.
Rebecca, you're on the clock right now, so go ahead. But no, it's a great song. I've heard it. You play it a number of times, and it's catchy. It's musical-esque, so that's why I'm saying it's catchy, but it is a really good song. So yeah, go check it out. You can go look on YouTube or whatever, but it's the Sovereign Grace live version that's really good.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there is another version.
I'm not sure. I didn't actually look for that, but
yeah, but
He will keep you.
I don't have very good eyes, so he will keep you. Psalm 121. Go check it out.
You've got mail.
Well, we have an email this week. So we don't usually get emails. So we're going to make a little segment here real quick. And this is from Mark Mark Carroll. And he's actually back in the country now, but he was in India, I think. But he didn't quite get this in for the last show. Apologize, Mark, but it's on this show. So why don't you go ahead and read it, and then we'll answer the question or make a comment, whatever.
Okay. I have been in India for the last 4 weeks, and I just want to say that the podcast sure helped the time fly on my 14-hour plane ride here.
Only 14 hours. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I would have thought it'd been more, but good for you.
So thank y'all for doing the show. So I've got to...
You're welcome.
So I've got to help try and reach some of the UPGs. Do you know what a UPG is?
I did when I looked it up like a week ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Unreached people groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Help and reach some of the UPGs with the believers here, and a young man here has been a great help as my translator. He's a new believer, but on fire for Jesus, and has peppered me with some tough questions he gets asked by his New Age friends.
Ooh, so I'm getting ready for this tough question.
So here's one question I was having trouble with getting across to him. Was wondering if y'all might have some insight on this topic, at least in your opinion. What happened to the dinosaurs? Did they exist? My question is, how can we answer this topic from a biblical perspective, since the new science has blinded the truth? Anyway, thanks again.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you. Did you finish it up?
Keep on keeping on.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Keith Green's statement. Thank you, Mark. So yeah, this is speaking of Job, the dinosaurs, did they exist? Yes, they existed. We have their bones.
Right.
It's in the Bible. Even it's we don't need to be afraid of dinosaurs. If you go
To be fair, though, when I was growing up, I
Yes.
grew up in a Christian home and went to Christian school, and I didn't like dinosaurs. I didn't like to talk about them because I thought dinosaurs were just part of evolution. I'm like, I don't believe in that.
Right.
Till after we got married.
Right.
Really, and started reading a lot of Answers in Genesis stuff and realized, so dinosaurs really did exist and they're
it's
not
okay.
bad.
Right? They're not bad. Well, they might be bad if you're face to face with them.
Well, okay.
But okay, so here's the thing: they did exist, and if you go to Answers in Genesis and ICR, Institute of Creation Research, there's a number of Dr. Dino, his son, Dino, whatever his name is. Ken Hoven's son, Eric Hoven. You look up these people. They have there's a number of resources on these subjects. Why creation people are more geared toward dinosaurs, I'm not so sure, but because people like to, and dinosaurs prove the Bible's wrong, but they're in the Bible. If you look up Behemoth and Leviathan, now some people would debate that those aren't dinosaurs. Well, there's some kind of dinosaur kind of creature, and Leviathan especially. The Behemoth is not a rhinoceros and is not a elephant. I'm sorry.
Right.
They're dinosaurs. They're some kind of dinosaur creatures. We have the fossils. We have their bones, so we know they existed. Now, some out there, I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not necessarily saying I believe this, and I'll explain why. Some people who believe in a gap theory, gap, they would say that the evidence was from a prior creation, and that's where the dinosaurs lived. The dinosaurs lived in that prior creation. I wouldn't bring this up to your friends because that's just going to convolute everything and, whatever. The fossils that we would see would have to come from Noah's flood. If they came from a previous flood, this flood would have undone that one. And so those fossils would probably be damaged or ruined or would not be around anymore.
Well, and it seems like they find dinosaur fossils at the same place where they find fossils of mankind.
Yes.
So
yes, that is
seem to exist together at some point in history.
Right. There is some people that have done different things and shown different pictures where there's person and a dinosaur together. Anyway, you can go research that yourself online, but the fact is that they are definitely in the Bible. We were just covering Job, and if you look up Leviathan and Behemoth and stuff like that. Now, were they on the ark? Was that one of the questions?
No.
Okay, so I guess some people would ask, were they on the ark as a mocking thing, like, they brought dinosaurs on the ark. Look, they did not bring a brontosaurus on the ark, a full-grown brontosaurus or a T-Rex full-grown on the ark. All the Bible says is that they took two of the kind.
Two of every kind.
They didn't bring every single dog breed. They just brought two dogs, a male and female dog. They didn't bring every horse breed. They brought a male and female horse.
Right.
They didn't bring every bird. Well, they brought a certain kind of birds, but they just brought the kind. And so if you're going to bring a dinosaur, for one, you're not going to bring a full-grown dinosaur. And in fact, most dinosaurs are small. Mm-hmm. We just are attracted to the big ones. And the few big ones that we see and have, most of them are human size and less. Mm-hmm. Most dinosaurs, fossils that we have. And so there's that. And you're going to take young ones, not full-grown adults that can't produce anymore. You're going to take young ones and then they can produce. And so either were killed and before the flood, so during the times of Noah, they chased them down and killed them all. I don't know. But there seems to be dragon legends even later in the Dark Ages and things like that. So could there have been dinosaurs around? Because the Bible, so the King James Bible was written in 1611, right? Mm-hmm. Translated in 1611. They didn't have a word dinosaur. Dinosaur didn't come into existence until 18-something. But the word dragon is. And dragon and dinosaur, same word. So if you look in the King James, dragon. I don't know the other translations, what they use. Yeah. But dragon probably. So if you look up dragon, it's in the Bible. And but anyway, that is kind of the argument that I would go to. But the The point being that yes, they existed. I would want to know why are they curious? What do they want? Are they trying to disprove the Bible? Or are they trying to say evolution is true because we have dinosaurs and the Bible doesn't speak of dinosaurs? For one, that's not true.
Right.
And just because certain animals, not every animal is mentioned in the Bible.
Right.
And so just because the Bible doesn't mention dinosaurs, in which I say they do, but just because we have fossils of dinosaurs doesn't mean that evolution is true. I don't see the connection there.
Yeah.
But just like we find fossils of, shells and things like that, or I guess shells are the fossils. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other animals that aren't in the Bible, but we have fossils of, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But anyway, the just because we find fossils of other animals that aren't in the Bible doesn't mean that the Bible is not true,
Right.
So anyway, but I hope that helps, Mark. Maybe you could clarify the question even more, but it seems like, dinosaurs did exist. And he's asking specifically from a biblical point of view.
Right.
Well, I would say go to Job.
Yeah. And look up dragon. See all the times dragons.
Yeah, if you just go to Blue Letter Bible right now. This is live on the air, and quickly search the word dragon. I know there's one in Revelation, the red dragon, but if you just do the word search,
dragon 19 times.
19 times, and I don't know the context of them. But just do a little research and look at that word dragon, beast, different things like that. There are mentions of these things. Look up Leviathan and Behemoth. Leviathan especially, he's a water animal, but it does sound like a dinosaur type creature. Yeah. And so anyway, it was a great creature. So anyway, that's I wouldn't be afraid of tackling that subject, talking about dinosaurs. I would definitely go to Answers in Genesis or CRI or ICR, whatever it is, Christian Research Institute and CRI. Yeah.
Institute for Creation Research.
Right. Okay. I got to keep my acronyms all straight. Anyway, I hope that helps. And if someone else has a better answer, maybe they can email in and answer the question a little bit more. All right. Thanks, Mark. If you have a question, then you can email at, I don't even know what it is anymore.
Talk at fellowshipofbelievers.org.
Yes, talk at fellowshipofbelievers.org. All right. Thank you.
The Mike Charleston Show is brought to you by Fellowship of Believers. For more information, go to our website at fellowshipofbelievers.org. Thank you for listening. We hope we have encouraged you to stand strong in the Lord Jesus and grow in Him.